It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesday. And I have not forgotten about the Zelda stuff and some of the other stuff. I am firing on a whole bunch of cylinders right now. You can see the state of my desk, all the colored pens. And there's a lot going on. More on that on Friday, or patrons will get first dibs at what I've been doing. Hair. It's a good kind of busy, but it's very busy. And there will be a ton of activity on the Discord, and this is the time to get in on the Discord. If you want Discord access right away, this is the week that the invites go out. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Coffee is the best place right now because Patreon's already been processed for the week, and we have to meet our goals. Our goals are very important. You guys have been also really great with Song's fundraiser. We're up to 23% of her next goal. So yay. I know I'm asking for a lot of stuff right now, and it's greatly appreciative that everybody has been so supportive. But yeah, there's a lot of movement on things that have kind of been along lately, which is so nice. But I want to talk about abusive language today because it has been normalized. Talking to people in abusive ways has been normalized. And I think a lot of people have internalized the idea that you're supposed to just take it. And that's not healthy. There's a reason it's called abusive. Oh, hello, Zelda. There's a reason it's called abusive language. It causes damage. There is a threshold where, you know, it's like hit points. You have so many hit points and you can still function, but eventually you do run out of hit points, and it does not just hurt you, but harm you. I work with people all the time that have, you know, damage to their self-esteem because of abusive speech that they've encountered, that because it's so normal, they don't realize that it's abusive. Similarly, some people mimic abusive methods of conversation, and they don't realize that certain phrases, certain ways of speaking to people are inherently abusive because they've been talked that way by people who claim to love them. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What makes something inherently abusive speech? And the TLDR, the simplest way to test it, you know, are you focusing on the specifics of an action that someone is doing? Or are you labeling someone in a negative way? Or in a positive way if you're using it to get what you want instead of just paying an honest compliment. And I mean, there are so many things that are potentially abusive that aren't, you know, guaranteed abusive. Those are gray areas. Things like withholding information. This is a tough one. If you look up websites, you will see that withholding information is a form of abuse. However, if you are dealing with an abusive person, you have no requirement to basically spring the trap. If you know someone is going to blow up on you, you are not required to walk into that bomb. So those are the sorts of things where mutual abuse is a thing. There tends to be one person with more power and one person with less power, which is why I'm not thrilled at the idea of mutual abuse. It's more a trade-off, right? If you've got two people who one person has more power in one sphere and uses that to abuse, and another person has more power in another sphere and uses that to abuse. That's not mutual abuse, that's trading abuses, right? That I think is more likely. I see a lot of very dysfunctional couples where they have so many unresolved issues and so many things that are unsaid that they just use things to stick it to each other, and they don't realize what they're doing. And people are, come on, they have to know. Not necessarily. And this is what makes it really, really hard. Some people have been raised by narcissists. I hate using that word because it's overused. People talk about narcissism if somebody shows the slightest bit of confidence. That's not what it is. A narcissist is someone who is empty inside. They have a lack of solid self-concept. And so they need constant praise, constant achievement, constant wealth, trappings of success, but none of it actually makes them happy. And then if someone challenges them, the rage comes out. And the whole covert narcissist phenomenon is an extra degree of difficulty because a covert narcissist doesn't have the grandiosity of, your typical kind of standard grandiose narcissist. But, you see, happened a lot of times when I was a games journalist. You just hit a point where the nice guy mask drops and you see, it might not be loud, but you see the rage, you see the hate in that moment. And that's where it's like, I learned way too late how to spot those signs. And again, it's being raised in abusive environments. Some people do not actually bear the typical markers of narcissism. They were just raised by a narcissist or were in a relationship with a narcissist where they felt helpless. And with trauma, there is the phenomenon of learned helplessness, and you start adapting to some of the characteristics of the abuser. And that's when you start getting reactions to, reactions from others that you don't understand. And it's very hard when you've survived abuse to know when it's your responsibility for the conflict going badly and when it's not. And that can make it very, very, very hard and exhausting to navigate social situations. And so when I start talking about this, I don't want anybody to think I'm saying you're intending to abuse. It's just food for thought, because I do think that, especially with the autistic people I work with, there's this, and I'm going to do a video about this later, the overdeveloped sense of responsibility for all social outcomes. And there are just times in life where you will do everything right and a person will still blow up. And it's really hard afterwards to not turn it around in your head a million times going, what did I do wrong? When the answer is often nothing. People brought their own baggage. Most communication is actually neutral in terms of who's right, who's wrong. It's all about trying to seek a common understanding. But there are things that are always good. Clarifying what you understand before responding to what you understand is always good. Now, some people with very low self-esteem will see that as condescending. You know when you're talking down to someone, you know when you're managing someone versus actually seeking to understand. There's a difference between, okay, I'm just going to tell you what I understand so you can tell me if it's right or wrong before I proceed, okay? Because I want to make sure I understand this so I don't put my foot in my mouth. There's that. And then there's, okay, what I understand you're saying is that you felt sad when obviously one is talking to someone like an equal and the other is talking to somebody like they're 12 years old. Now, if people just thought I did an impression of their therapist on the second one, that's part of the problem. I hate that. Okay, so we cannot stand that. Can't, like, there's a reason I work in the no pity zone. I can't stand that shit. It bothered me. It bothers other people. And if some people like that, if some people are reassured by that, that's great. That's a good fit. I'm here for the rest of y'all, right? You saw the difference there in how the relating back what you understood for confirmation was delivered. That makes a big difference. And, you know, when I had Jeff Pereira on It's Not Therapy, Jeff's great resource on Twitter, but he said the best way to get your intents across is to make sure you are actually behaving in accordance with your intentions. So if you want to communicate clearly and you sense there's a misunderstanding, step back, come at it again, instead of just going, you misunderstand me. That phrase, you are not understanding, or you misunderstand me, that's a yellow flag. That could be someone just misspeaking. It could also be an attempt to gaslight you. There's a misunderstanding here, or there's been a breakdown in communication. Okay, but do you see the difference? One is a miscommunication happening between people. One is assigning fault for the miscommunication entirely on the other party. That is the difference between neutral language and inherently abusive language. And that particular one can also be a sign that someone is too insecure to admit they're wrong or to admit they made a mistake, in which case, proceed with caution. Those people are not fun to deal with. But you get into other things that are inherently abusive. The one I find so normalized, thank you, Big Bang Theory, is you're annoying. It's become this romantic trope of, oh, she's annoying, and then oh no, they fall in love. Why the hell do you want to get with a guy that summarizes your entire character, you're annoying, defining you with this label, or you're lazy, or you're too sensitive, or all of these insults that are describing the entire person, as opposed to keeping it to an individual event. And even the you're annoying right now, that can still be abusive. You're annoyed. I'm annoyed. Unless someone is doing it deliberately, own your reaction, right? Own your reaction. For the longest time, people would label me annoying or difficult, and then when I didn't just take it, I was accused of being too sensitive, or also proof of being difficult. And my take on that is that I'm pretty clear what I'm about fairly early in things. I don't hide. I don't pretend to be fake nice. And so if somebody takes me onto something, I am enough of a known commodity that they know what I'm about when they hire me. And so if they hit me with you're difficult, or you're being difficult midway, you knew who I was when I showed up. So statements like that are just an attempt to control me. If you look at at Stalker Chan, she's fascinating because she has taught me how much of advocate language, of activist language, is inherently abusive. You're a transphobe. Well, someone can have one opinion that is off, but that doesn't mean a person is afraid or hateful of an entire group overall. They're just maybe a point they don't understand, for instance. But her latest one is I'm a racist, and her evidence is a bio from the old TV station that I didn't write. And she calls me a narcissist a lot, which I am not. I would be doing better professionally if I was. But you notice the label. And what I realized is it's not just that she's a nasty piece of work. And I stand by that. That's not me trying to be helpful. That's not me speaking out for justice. That's just, she's been stalking me for 11 years. At this point, I'm allowed to say she's a nasty piece of work. But she's using language she picked up from the activist circles she likes to infiltrate for clout, for easy clout. First, she was a stunning and brave victim of domestic violence when she was a perpetrator. Now she's pretending to be a trans woman. And now that the war in Gaza has broke out, now all of a sudden she cares very much about the plight of the Palestinians. But she's emulating language she gets from activism. And it's inherently abusive. And activism has really lost its way because when you get the how to speak to people books from reputable advocacy organizations, they tell you not to call people transphobes because they just shut down. No, nobody wants to be called a name. Don't do it. We all agree that freedom for adults and the welfare of children is extremely important. And that's why I advocate for medical decisions for trans youth to be between them, their families, and a qualified doctor. That is, don't legislate what medicine a doctor can do. Thank you, state. That works much better because you're appealing to common values. You're getting what's called interest convergence. And that is actually how to speak to people in your real life, right? Like, look, we're all good people. We all want this to be good. So let's figure out what we can agree on and table the stuff we don't agree on instead of, you're not letting me talk, these accusations. The problem is, since so much of people's socialization now, especially younger people, is through advocacy, because we're all navigating the social media environment where people will just jump on you for one word and transphobe, racist, bigot, hateful, all that stuff. We are so used to being on the receiving end of abuse, we end up emulating it in our own speech. It's an epidemic at this point. And so I invite you, because this is what I've done, is one, every time the word should comes out of your mouth, question it. I find it's only really applicable about 30% of the time. Whenever it is a to or not enough, you're not putting in enough effort, you're too sensitive, question that. Because compared to what? Who gets to determine what enough is? And was enough made clear at the beginning of the task, right? Because if there was no benchmark set, if there was no good enough bar, who's determining what's enough, right? And then again, anything where someone is telling you an overall characteristic or placing a negative judgment on something you are or something you did, instead of just saying what the issue for them is. Like, look, can you not do it? It's driving me crazy. Like somebody bouncing a ball. That when the ball bouncing and the fidgeting in offices, when I still had to work in offices, drove me friggin' crazy. It just, You could hear someone's headphone music over here, and someone was bouncing a fucking ball over here, and then someone was just fidgeting like crazy, and I was trying to work, and I was getting completely overstimulated from peripheral vision. And sometimes I just got up and went and worked in the hallway. Shared workspaces do not work for me. But it wouldn't have done any good for me to say to that someone, your music is annoying. Your ball bouncing is annoying. You're like, if the workplace allows them to do it, you got to work it out, because they're probably using, the fidgeting, the ball bouncing, it's probably stimming of a form. So, me saying, I cannot work, I am being overwhelmed by white noise and movement, that's valid. You're annoying is a negative judgment. And let's face it, what does it do other than make a person feel bad? And if you're trying to find a shorthand for how not to be abusive, before you say something, think, what is this comment going to do? What is this criticism going to do other than make a person feel bad? And if it's you're annoying, well, I want them to stop bouncing the ball. Well, then can you please stop bouncing the ball for 10 minutes? I'm having trouble collecting my thoughts. Is specific, and people know what you want. You're annoying just hurts. And yes, I know that annoying was the love language between Sheldon and Amy on Big Bang Theory. That was a horribly abusive relationship, and the fact that my mother loved that show completely freaks me out to this day. And a lot of sitcom behaviors are very abusive, including my beloved Golden Girls. And there's a whole thing there about, that was a commentary on the 80s and the fact that all of those women had really been through the wars. And the fact that Dorothy took so much, and she was the one whose husband ran away with a flight attendant, I think that wasn't accidental. It got worse as the series went on. But I do find that, because Dorothy's the golden girl I identify the most with when I was a kid. I was like, why is everybody so mean to Dorothy? Dorothy's awesome. But she did grow up in a household with very overbearing parents, as much as everyone loves Sophia. And then she was badly mistreated by a relationship because her mom calls her ugly. And so she eats a lot of shit. And as smart as she is, and as cool as we all see her as, there is a pain and a sadness inside that character because she is constantly eating shit. And, well, that's a very interesting character point. It's cool to analyze. You don't have to take that. You can say, please ask me for what you want. I can't just stop being annoying. I can't make bricks without clay. Don't call me annoying. Give me details. And if someone keeps calling you annoying because, they know it gets to you, well, then you've made it clear that that's not accidentally abusive behavior. That's deliberately abusive behavior, and you can take that person's opinion and put it on the scrap heap where it belongs. Now, if that's a loved one, that gets very complicated, but that is the topic of a video for another time. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone to use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. GoFundMe, please. If you want to do a one-time thing, please kick Song some money over on our coffee. Check the 2 Women Talking videos for that link. Thanks for watching, and be well.